All right. Hi, David Lewis. How are you? Welcome back. We've got a new premier in New South Wales. Daniel Perrottet, Gladys Berejiklian resigned as well. We've got an Omicron variant of COVID-19 coming out. What's your thoughts on that, on our new premier?
Well, our new premier, I don't think is any better than the old premier. I'm leaving. One of the things that they tried to do is direct everything to his religious beliefs.
Well, he's so Catholic. That they can,
yeah, and that's fine. He's a very extreme form of Catholic too, and of course we live in a secular state and a democracy where you're allowed to have whatever religious belief you like, provided they don't transgress the law of the state. So that's why they were trying to push discussion there, so they could start to shut down criticism of him by saying, well, that's his personal beliefs, which he has a perfect right to, which of course he does. He was one of the faction in the New South Wales cabinet who pushed hard against going into lockdown. We now see 4 months later lockdown and Victoria in chaos, that was a mistake, and that they should have locked down very quickly, and it would have got things, even Delta, under a lot more control than it did. He has said that he wants to see the virus rip, which brings us to Omicron. We all thought we'd beaten Delta, and then this new strain comes through. Now, we don't quite know yet how bad it is. I think Norman Swan said something along the lines of, we're hoping for that it'll spread, but it'll be mild. A few people picked up on that and said that's what it is, that it's mild, it'll spread, but it's mild. He didn't quite say that. So I know that hospitalizations have gone up in South Africa where it was found. It doesn't come from South Africa. It was found in South Africa. So we've got to be careful. When we read this stuff, when we find out about this stuff, one, who's saying it? Two, why are they saying it? And three, what are they saying?
Well, let's look at this, because I listen to Fox News and Sky News as well. As you know, I'm on the right myself, David. And what's going on with Joe Biden is he's making these vaccine mandates, and healthcare workers are getting the sack. Some police officers, so people are moving to Florida. By the sounds of it, New South Wales has become a police state as well, because you've got to show your vaccine pass as well just to go and have a coffee, which is a pain in the ass. Now, I was listening to Sky News, and an epidemiologist was saying that we're just going to have to build herd immunity to it. And eventually, this virus it's going to infect no one. I was watching a show on Disney Plus last night, COVID-19, and actually seeing people on a ventilator. It's quite scary. And yes, this is dangerous as well. And how hard it hit America when Donald Trump was in president. But there's some things, Fox News is not happy about what Joe Biden is doing as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And Sky News.
Yeah. Well, it's the same company. What they call it, Fox in America, and Sky in here, and in Britain it's B Sky B in Britain, I think. The thing with a vaccine mandate, and this I think a lot of people don't understand. This isn't. We have a lot of mandates in daily life. It's a mandate that we walk on the left side of the road. When people don't, it's a pain. A mandate for health is slightly different. People say, it impinges on my rights. It does, but in this case, it's for the greater good. herd immunity, if we can get it, would be great. And the only way you can really get it is either by losing 10 or 20 or 50% of your population from dying from the virus. And you do die from it. I know that there's a school of thought that say, no, you only die from it if you have comorbidities. That's not actually true. There are, certainly if you have comorbidities, you have a much higher chance of dying. But there have been perfectly healthy people go in and who have died from it. The only other way, of course, to get herd immunity is through effective vaccination.
Well, that's what we're trying to do, David, in New South Wales. I mean, a booster shot's available next year, but then I don't know, because I had Peter Sitgreaves, Liberal member for Camden, on the podcast this week, and we don't know if there's going to be any more variants of this COVID-19. From what the epidemiologists are saying, herd immunity could be the answer to this. Yeah,
that's what we're hoping for. And the best way, the best way of getting herd immunity is by being vaccinated. New South Wales was going to relax a whole lot of restrictions once we reached 90%. Now, we could argue over that figure and whether it's a true 90%, because does it include certain people, and is it enough? Is it too much? I'm not going to argue over that here, because the Stephen Shields radio show has a lot of good stuff to talk about too, and I don't want to take up the rest of the week. You got other guests you got to talk to, and just on a quick footnote, your guests have been fantastic.
Thank you.
But we're falling short by 0.5% of that 90%. Again, we could argue, well, should they round it up? Because instead of 1 in 20 people, it's 1 in 21 people or something, which isn't that much of a difference. But the best way of stopping all of these discussions is by getting vaccinated. It's not putting microchips into you. It's not making you magnetic. We know what's in it. Basically, it's a form of the virus, so that your antibodies can recognize this is the virus. Now, as for how bad or how okay Omicron is, we don't know yet. I don't think.
No, we don't know yet. And look, you look at I've started seeing Metallica's playing in front of a concert again, and Megadeth as well. So the United States, they're going back to like what we were living pre-pandemic at concerts. See, they don't take their social distancing as seriously like we do in Australia as well.
I mean, to be fair, if you go to Metallica or Megadeth, you want to be in the mosh.
Oh yeah,
you don't want to be. You don't want to be arm's distance. This is fun.
I know.
And presumably, they're taking a calculated risk.
Well, they went with the Johnson & Johnson. Dr. Fauci as well. Been watching a documentary by Dr. Fauci. He's worked with the left and right. Right.
Yes, he has.
You can see him talk, in a meeting with the president. It's on Disney Plus, by the way. Ex-President Donald Trump. I think. Now, here's a question: if John McCain was on the right, was he?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, would have you rather John McCain being the president instead of Donald Trump?
John McCain seemed to me to be a relatively decent man. He was a Vietnam veteran. He was shot down and captured by the Viet Cong and tortured by the Viet Cong.
Shit.
If you watch Ken Burns' documentary on Vietnam, there's quite a bit on McCain there, actually. So he was a genuine war hero. And Trump, who was able to get medical exemptions on very dubious grounds, said he didn't like soldiers who got captured, which is one thing to say when you've never had a shot fired at you in anger. It's another thing to say if he was a veteran. Now, I'll be fair here too. If you were going to skip going to a war, Vietnam was one. Bill Clinton avoided going to war, partly through his university.
What about George Bush? He didn't go.
Yep, he didn't go either, yeah. And again, it was one of those... World War II was a different thing. Avoiding going to World War II, there were still reasons, and genuinely held beliefs of pacifism or... but even pacifists like Woody Guthrie joined the Merchant Navy, so they're helping supplies go through. So they're helping the war effort, even if they're not combatants. So I don't know that I don't know that McCain would have been a great president, but I think he probably would have been a better president than Donald Trump. Certainly he wouldn't have encouraged an insurrection on the steps of the Capitol.
How come John McCain, is he going to run for president again? Because Fox News is supporting Donald Trump quite a bit.
John McCain died last year. Yeah, he had brain cancer. So probably not. We're still waiting to hear, but probably not. I think he's busy.
See, I can't keep up to date on everything, David.
No, that's true. His daughter, I've forgotten her name, is being pressured by the Republicans to leave. She's a senator or a member of the House. I want to say Elizabeth McCain. So she may continue on his legacy. I think what we may see is a split in the Republican Party between we'll call them the traditionalists, those who liked Reagan and Bush, and we'll call them the radicals, those who are absolute Trump supporters. And one of those factions is going to break off, I think. I don't think the Trumps will, because they need the resources of a party, whereas I think the other side, which is mostly establishment people, will be able to use the resources of a new party.
Now, we had a council election last weekend as well.
We did, yes.
Did you vote?
Of course, it is my civic duty. I pre-polled, actually, because Saturday's a busy day for me. I put my vote in, and still looking for the results for Canterbury Bankstown. I know they're out there, but I keep forgetting to look them up.
Yeah, look,
which is terrible.
I don't really focus too much on council elections. I'm more focusing on state and federal.
The thing is that local elections are probably in many ways the most important, because that's the branch of government that is providing the road at your house. It's providing often your sewerage. It's providing a lot of the infrastructure that you require. This is not to disparage what state and federal give, of course, but there's a lot more corruption in local government than state government, which people in New South Wales will be snorting with derision at, but it's actually true, because not enough people watch it carefully. So it's good to know who the mayor is, who the councillors are, who they're working for. Are they genuine councillors who are there to try and make the community a better place? This is not a party endorsement, by the way. This isn't saying that members of these parties tend to do better than members of other parties. This is, I've said a million times on the New Politics podcast, I'm always in favour of honest, hardworking, passionate members of government. And I don't really care what party they're in. That's the first step. If you have a good local member, if you have a good council, if you have good council people, you're ahead. It doesn't matter really what party they're in.
Well, see, I was listening to Sky News this week. Malcolm Turnbull was sort of rubbishing the Prime Minister, saying that Scott Morrison lied. Now, Malcolm Turnbull, he was a bit crazy himself when he was Prime. He was a Fabianist or something. But he didn't do too well as our prime minister. Yet he's rubbishing Scott Morrison. Like, why would you rubbish your own liberal, liberal prime minister? And he was replaced.
Well, Scott Morrison replaced him.
Yeah.
The day after Scott Morrison had said, "I'm ambitious for Malcolm Turnbull," he managed to get the numbers and roll him as prime minister. So we guess he was ambitious for him to be turfed out, and Scott Morrison.
What happened to Tony Abbott as well? He was turfed out, replaced by Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah, that's politics.
Labor government did the same with Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd. Sure. You know,
the trouble with both parties is that there's not a lot of unity in there. It's settled down a bit in Labor.
Anthony Albanese is going to run, I think, for Prime Minister.
Yes, he's leader of the party, and so he will be hoping that the Labor Party will win enough seats in the House of Representatives to form government.
Where's Bill Shorten gone?
He's still on the front bench. He's working every day for Labor policy. He's shadow for aged care and social security, I think. Bill. If Bill had said at the end of the last election, "I'm stepping down," I've done my go and left, everybody would have said, "Okay, fair enough." He's still a very senior member of government, working very senior member of the Labor Party, working hard to make sure that the Labor philosophy and Labor policy and opposing the government. So it doesn't happen often, but occasionally. Wayne Swan did too. I can't think of any Liberal leaders offhand who did, but I know that there were. It's a very John Howard actually. After he was knifed as leader of the opposition in '86. He got up the next morning and started working for the Labor Party. I'll say that again. Started working for the Liberal Party.
John Howard, yeah, he was an interesting man, long time. And then the previous was Bob Hawke. He was in how many years was Bob Hawke president? 10 years was he?
Prime Minister 11, I think.
Shit, that's Howard a long beats time.
Him. Yeah, it's particularly in the brutality of Australian politics. Our longest serving prime minister was Robert Menzies, who did 16 years.
Was he Labor or Liberal?
No, he was Liberal. He was Liberal. Before I think it was Lyons on 9 years, and he died in office.
Yeah.
Bruce in 7 years. So yeah, then after then it's 4 and 5 years. I think the average term is about 5 years, which is 2 terms really. We have 3-year terms, but rarely does a parliament run the 3 years.
Now, how's New Politics going for you? How's that?
Great. We're about to do our final podcast today. We've been interviewing independent movements and independent candidates around Australia. So we spoke to Kooyong, Voices of Kooyong. We spoke to what's called the Shady Sulkar campaign in the seat of Deakin in Victoria. We spoke to Zoe Daniel, who's running in the seat of Goldstein, and I'm just about to I spoke to her yesterday. We're just about to release tomorrow my interview with Kylie Tink in North Sydney.
Now, are these members just starting out, David, or have they been in politics for a while? I figured,
No, they're all just starting. The Voices of campaign is a national movement of quite a few seats who don't want to vote for the established parties anymore. They want independent people in who will represent the seat.
See, people have been trying to vote for independent parties for years, but they can't beat the Labor or the Liberal government.
It's hard. It does happen. I'm trying to think of.
Clive Farmer tried, but I don't know.
Clive's a different story, and he had a there was people like Ted Mack, who held the seat of North Sydney for 12 years or something.
Wow.
Peter Andren in Orange held it for 7, but he died.
Yeah.
Who else? Jackie Lambie is an independent.
She's still going.
She's still going. She's in the Senate, of course. It's a little bit easier for independent senators to be elected, although I don't know if this was part of the interview or not, but Kylie Tink was saying how hard it is as an independent to run because it's very expensive, and it shouldn't be expensive. If you can get enough people to show that you're a Zali Stegel, of course, in Warringah is another independent who's currently sitting. If you can get enough people to say yes, this is a serious candidate, I think, and then you put down your $500 deposit. I think that you should get allocated a certain budget to advertise and you can't exceed that budget, and that we stop donations to political parties, and I think that would sort a lot of stuff out. And we used to have that, and in fact we still do in a way, in that if you get more than 4% of the primary vote, you get $1.20 for each vote you get, or something. I can't remember the exact figure now, but that was a good thing because it meant that if you were pretty serious, you could stand in the next election and not have to worry about raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, which means that some people, there are some donors who give a lot of money and then expect a return on that, and we don't want that. We want people to be elected on merit. We want people to be elected fairly. We want people to be elected without vested interests, or at least interests that they declare. I mean, yeah, Labor obviously came out of the union movement, so that's fine. They say that's open and historical fact, and everybody knows that. If you were a party that was in favour of, the National Party in favour of mining, as long as we know this, that's fine too. It's not about whether it's good or bad. It's openness. Go ahead. Sorry.
The thing is, I've been reading the ABC, and I know they're not affiliated with any of the parties themselves. I'm trying to read a bit of the Sydney Morning Herald if I can.
Yep.
But it's always more expensive, the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah. Yeah. It's owned by Fairfax.
Yeah.
And Fairfax is owned by a cartel, or cartel's the wrong word.
You're not in Mexico, David.
I'm not, it's owned by a consortium, and the chair of Fairfax is Peter Costello, ex-Treasurer of Australia. So there's some kind of bias there.
It's like a price of a cup of coffee, small coffee.
Yeah.
See, the Daily Telegraph sells more than the Herald for some reason.
Yeah. The Telegraph realizes that Sydney exists outside of the lower North Shore and the inner west and the eastern suburbs. The Telegraph does the local coverage a little bit better. A little bit better. You'll get stories coming out of Parramatta, and you'll get stories coming out of Liverpool and Campbelltown and Emu Plains and Bankstown, and which I'm probably being unfair to the Sydney Morning Herald, but they're less prominent, those stories.
What are you reading as your choice of news media?
I like the independents, the good independents, not the wackies. So I'll start with New Politics.
Yes.
But I like Independent Australia. I don't mind Crikey. I don't mind Kangaroo Court is a little bit, he can be a little bit on the more obsessed side of things, but he does a good job. I like that type of thing. And then I keep my eye on Twitter and Instagram where people will put stories up.
Yeah.
Which tend to be what I need to know, interestingly enough. So
see, I stay away from political posts on social media and news chat rooms. I prefer to get it on audio podcasts. That's how I get my news. Because there's people out there that want to troll David and just put shit on people.
Oh yeah.
You
got to be scrolly, and
I don't comment on vaccine posts.
Oh no. Oh, some of the nonsense that and I don't know where they get it from.
The government, I think the Scott Morrison government's trying to bring in these anti-trolling laws and Facebook cracking down on tech companies about privacy regulations.
Hello?
Yeah, you there?
Yeah.
Awkward silence.
Just as we start talking about vaccine, it goes down.
No, but that's what
listeners. If I'm not here tomorrow, I have been kidnapped.
But that's what's going on in Australia, David.
Yeah. It there's been, and I don't quite know where it's come from, but there's been a movement saying that the vaccines are all to do with some kind of Chinese communist takeover of Australia in 1976 or 1974. And the mask wearing is about teaching Australians compliance. Australia is one of the most compliant nations in the world. So I don't know what it is they want to teach. It's just really weird. And when people are reading this stuff, you hear the phrase, do your research. I've done my research. I've been right through the archives of the National Parliament from 1901 through to about 1988. There are no documents saying that Australia was sold. There is no legislation. There is no hidden legislation. It's all in the archives.
See, the thing with China, David, is if you want to do business in China, you gotta be politically correct with China. So
sure, that's true of every country too.
The thing is,
if you want to do business with France,
you can't say certain things that'll upset their government. I think South Park did an episode about this. They took the piss out of it. It's quite funny. But that's what's going on. If you want to do business with China, you got to make China happy.
Yeah. But and listeners, I thought, we were waiting for the long silence here. That's what we miss about David's interviews, the long silence. Well, I'm trying to come up with an answer, but the thing is most countries will have. You'd be hard pressed to go into any American business and say the American system of government and the American people are stupid. A lot of Americans, you might get some fringe guys who say, yeah, you're right. But most, even those who don't like Joe Biden or Donald Trump, will say, you've got no right to say that. We want to deal with you. We've got plenty of people who we can buy our stuff. So while I'm not a fan of the Chinese government per se, And I want to stress it's the Chinese government I'm not a fan of. Chinese people, Chinese culture is all wonderful, and Chinese immigration to Australia has enriched it.
I like your political correctness, David.
It's not political correctness, it's political truth. Yeah.
This is
but
awesome.
It's political truth I'm speaking. The Chinese government, in the same way that I mightn't like an Australian government or a British government, that's my issue with the Chinese government. But I'm not trading. They're not interested in what I have to sell. But if they did, I would be probably a bit more what's the word? Diplomatic in my criticisms. Just because that's how you do business. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
No, but this was an awesome episode. Final one for the year for me and you, David. It's always great having you on, and
always great to be here, Steve. I love doing these.
Looking forward for 2022 by the sounds of it. I think what have we got? A state or a federal election next year?
Federal election due by May the 22nd.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing an election special with you.
Done. Sign me up.
This will be good.
Yep, sign me up. I love to do it.
You know, and music, are you gigging lately, or what's happening with you?
I am. If anybody is in the Ryde area on this Sunday, my duo Red Alert with Russell Hull, who's an incredible singer, will be playing at Club Ryde.
Nice.
Not the Leagues Club and not the Top Ride Club. Club Ryde on Victoria Road from 1 till 4. Afternoon of relaxed chills. Nice. Or it might be a dancey, depending on the crowd. If you want to dance, come along. We'll see what we can do.
Exactly. Guys, if you want ad-free shows of the Stephen Shields radio show, just $1 a month will help support the podcast. So at the moment, I'm looking for sponsors, but this will help monetize if you want to support the show. If any listeners out there, go support David Lewis's work, watch New Politics, or you're planning on filming your podcasts in the future?
I've got a great face for radio, so probably not.
Yeah, go listen to it.
If 30,000 of you sign up, Steve can have me on next month.
Always do. No, it's an interesting show. What's going on the left? And yeah, this is awesome, David. And yeah, great show. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I'd just like to thank you for having me on again and again and again. And thanks to all the listeners, and all the very best for the season for everyone listening.
You too.